The meat industry is surrounded by a lot of controversy, from how animals are treated to how much of the meat you are eating actually comes from where you think it comes from. In this documentary, we will delve into the world of meat, exploring these controversies, and we will find out the truth about the meat industry. We started off by getting in contact with the local butchers. Beaumont's Butchers is home to a variety of quality meat. We interviewed Adam, the owner of the company, to ask him about how he prepares his meat, what he knows about the meat industry, and some other questions regarding his business.
We're now here at the Beaumont Butchers to ask Adam a few questions about the meat industry. So what made you become a butcher?
Well, mainly because I was a chef for years and I never got to see my children. It just offered a better family life for me.
Cool. What would you say is your highest and lowest quality of meat? Or cut of meat, sorry?
I wouldn't say quality is what you'd... The lowest price cut of meat is something like liver. Pig's liver, lamb's liver is the cheapest. Highest cut of meat would be something like the fillet steak, beef fillet steak.
What is the difference between meat being prepared in an independent company like this and a batch production in a factory?
Well, the main difference is the way it's processed. The process itself is a lot more methodical. You have things done to perfection in terms of being in the butchers. In mass production, it is cut quickly. You'll find that it's not trimmed up properly, and then that's for whoever takes it on to finish it off.
What are your main feelings about how animals are treated in main factories?
I believe for the majority animals are treated okay. Obviously it's still not an ideal world. I mean, ideal world there would be no pain in the animals, but I think all these scandals about animals being injured and what have you is very few and far between, because as a factory, as a slaughterhouse, the more you damage that animal, that meat, the less it's worth, and the butchers aren't going to have meat that's bruised and...
Evidently, the meat industry creates lots of jobs for people, and to see people's passion for it is great to see. However, the meat industry does have some controversy in how the meat gets to the independent companies and factories all around the world. It's known that the treatment of the animals is terrible through visual evidence and articles by Peter. We got in contact with Peter to find out more about how these animals are treated before death. Fortunately, Peter got back to me and stated that they were very busy due to limited time and resources, but would try to answer the questions using various articles from their website. They also directed me to lots of other resources. All of the quotes below are taken from these resources. Farmed animals have feelings, thoughts and personalities, just as we do. Yet the livestock industry treats them like machines, with cruelty that's hard to swallow. Humans don't need to eat animals to live. In fact, we are healthier if we don't. Time and time again, it's been demonstrated that a plant-based diet is better for us and the environment. Peter didn't know the answer to this, however they directed me to a site showing live death count of a wide variety of animals. It's incredibly shocking to see, and it really makes you think. Peter provided a variety of resources for this on their website. These include being an animal activist, read up all there is to know about animal cruelty, share it with your friends, give out leaflets, and create a group at school or college discussing these issues, etc. The responses from Peter really put into perspective what the animals really go through to be on your plate. Animals are treated horrifically. A major example of this is how cows are raped. In a Peter article, it states that to impregnate a cow, a person jams his or her arm far into the cow's rectum in order to locate and position the uterus, and then forces an instrument into her vagina. The cow is defenceless to stop this violation. It's disgusting to hear how these animals are mistreated. The article goes on to say that when a human is forcibly and involuntarily violated sexually, it's called rape. When animals on factory farms are forcibly violated sexually, it's called artificial insemination. Perhaps that's the reason for why people turn vegetarian. Not because they don't want to eat animals, but because they don't want to eat something that's been raped and treated inhumanely. We spoke to Amy Cook, who's been a vegetarian for roughly 4 years now, to see what she thinks of the animal cruelty in the meat industry. More than 200 million animals are killed a day all around the world, just on land. Would you say that the people should just stop eating meat to reduce the amount of animals killed? Or are there any other ways to reduce these numbers?
I believe that people should just stop eating meat because there are alternatives. For example, corn southern fried chicken tastes exactly like normal southern fried chicken. You've got all the flavours there, so you don't need to put an animal through all that pain and murder so your taste buds can be happy.
Are you aware of how animals are treated before they are killed to become meat?
I am aware of how animals are treated before they're killed to become meat. The way that they are treated is very inhumane, and if humans were treated that way, there would be a massive outburst about it. For example, calves are taken away from their parents, they're artificially inseminated and forced to have babies, which in my opinion is basically rape. If that was you, then you would not want that to happen to you.
Was it just the eating of an animal that made you become vegetarian, or was it how the animals were treated that made you become vegetarian?
I became a vegetarian because I've always loved animals and I've always believed that everything should be treated equally. I've also read into how animals are treated, and I don't believe that animals should go through suffering when you've got the other options. You can eat vegetables, corn meals, and plenty of other food. If you were to go to an abattoir and see how the animals are treated, then I don't think you'd want to eat animals.
What is the worst case of animal abuse that you've heard of?
The worst case of animal abuse that I've heard of is to do with cows. They're artificially inseminated, which means they're forced to have a lot of babies. The children are dragged away and it's absolutely disgusting. And this is all done just so the companies can make a profit.
How can we stop the inhumane act of animal abuse?
I think that you can stop the cases of animal abuse by stopping people from buying and eating meat. You can also make people more aware of how their meat is processed, as most people think that their meat is free range, but really they're treated horrifically. If that was a human that was treated like that, it would be frowned upon.
What's the one thing you would say to people who abuse these animals?
The one thing that I'd say to people who abuse these animals is to think of the golden rule and how they'd feel if they were treated like that. When they abuse and kill these animals when they're still conscious, think of how you'd feel and how that'd be seen if you were doing that to a human, because it's basically murder. You're murdering a living creature for money.
It's really interesting to see the perspective of a vegetarian. They have solid, rational points, and I think that the meat eaters sometimes forget the hard truth about how the meat gets onto their plates. If they know the truth, would they still eat meat? Another factor about the meat industry that people don't often consider is how much of their meat is what they think it is. In supermarkets, you see labels saying 100% beef or 100% chicken, etc. But can this be trusted? A major example of this was the horse meat scandal in 2013, in which meat products from all over Europe were found to contain horse meat.
On the 16th of January, 10 million burgers were taken off the shelves after traces of horse meat were found. At the end of the month, Burger King revealed its burgers were contaminated by horse meat. On the 2nd of February, Findus were notified by their French supplier Comigel that their beef lasagna may contain horse meat. On the 6th of February, Tesco and Aldi removed frozen meals that were made by Comigel. And yesterday, the Food Standards Agency revealed some Findus lasagnas contain 60 to 100% horse meat.
So the meat scandal of 2013 with the whole horse sort of stuff, did that affect your butchery or?
Yes, it did. To begin with, it increased sales because people would rather shop where it can be traced.
Do all your meats contain 100% meat that's out of stated to be 100% meat?
Yes, completely. You can get yourself in a lot of trouble if you don't.
Do you think the mass-produced meat products from factories are more likely to not contain 100% of the meat that they say they do?
Yes, to a certain extent. Again, it's all down to traceability. Most factories, most slaughterhouses, most butcher shops have to be able to trace their meat. Especially if you're buying abroad, you can't 100% trace where that meat's coming from. So there is more chance, I'm not saying it happens, but there is more chance.
It's evident from this that the meat from your local butchers is a more trustworthy source of meat than a supermarket. It may be more expensive, but would that extra cost be worth it to know that what you are eating is really what you think it is? We spoke to the general public and asked them what they thought about this and other controversies in the meat industry.
Are you more likely to buy meat from a local butcher or supermarket?
Probably from a butcher.
I tend to buy it from a supermarket.
How do you feel about how the way animals are treated? Like no boundaries around that? Just
Well, I've got a friend who's a cattle farmer, and I don't eat meat myself, but he's a very good friend, and I know he takes very good care of his cattle. So I think from a welfare point of view, I'd prefer that all of our meat that we eat comes from this country, where it can be carefully monitored, and we can adhere to all the veterinarian rules, and we know that the animals have to be treated in a certain way, rather than any meat coming in from abroad. So that's how I would feel.
I'm not sure if that's totally true, although I'm, probably some truth in it. I tend not to think about it, to be honest.
yeah, cool. Do you think there's anything companies can do to improve the well-being of any sort of animal, anything to do with the industry at all?
Yes, I think so. I think they should ensure that all of their meat comes from this country. I think that they should try and source locally produced meat as well. I think that they need to have a look at the way that the animals are raised and in what conditions. Yeah. And, if they're happy, they should, they should make sure that their clients understand how those animals are kept and what happens to them from farm to fork, really, so that we know where our meat comes from.
Well, I suppose lobby for more humane ways of treating animals or how they're slaughtered.
Yeah, cool.
Unfortunately, we weren't able to talk to many people as they just didn't want to come up to us and talk about animal cruelty in the meat industry. Maybe this shows how complacent most people are in that they turn a blind eye to, or just don't want to know about it. It's really insightful to hear what everyone has to say, especially as the two people we spoke to both had a different viewpoint on it. It was also great to inform people about the cruel acts of animal abuse so they can act on it in the future by spreading the word and becoming an activist, and hopefully do something about it. If you are asking yourself, what do I do to stop the controversies of the meat industry, then we have a few suggestions. To say eat less meat wouldn't be helpful at all. It would decrease the blood pressure, chances of cancer, and chances of a stroke or heart attack in a person. But for some people, eating less meat or cutting it out of their diet altogether wouldn't be possible. We recommend that you buy meat from a butcher instead of a supermarket, as they stock higher quality meat products and they are a much more trustworthy source of meat. Unfortunately, not much can be done to fight the abuse of animals and wipe it out completely, but raising awareness for it is the best thing that you can do. So, next time you eat a steak, or a piece of chicken in a roast dinner, or any piece of meat, just think, where has this meat come from? And most importantly, how was that animal treated?